Good afternoon. I've been asked to come and share with you some tips for interviewing. Normally I would do this in person, but I'm not available at the time scheduled. So I'm excited about this because interviewing is one of the most important parts of getting a job. Many of you already have positions promised. Some of you have facilities where you're pretty confident you'll get a job, and some of you don't. Also, in your future, you may change the current job that you've already established, or perhaps it is waiting for you. So it's really good idea to have good tips about interviewing. One of the reasons I enjoy doing this presentation is that I have many years of a lot of interviewing. I served as the manager of the intensive care unit at St. Mark's Hospital for 8 years. I interviewed a lot of nurses for intensive care positions. I was also a chief nurse at Lakeview as well as St. Mark's Hospital, excuse me, for another 8 years. So there's 16 years of reviewing resumes and interviewing. In addition to that, I owned a staffing agency for 5 years, and I interviewed a lot of nurses that wanted to work at an agency. So extensive interview experience and resume reviewing is part of my specialty. Let's talk about the interview itself. You have finally submitted your resume, been called for an interview, and it's time for you to go in for the interview. And I took a few notes here so that I could stay organized. Before you go into a new place, if it's a place you're not as familiar with, be sure to search the website. One of the things that I was always impressed with is somebody that had reviewed the website or had some familiarity with the culture and the particulars about whatever facility or whatever position I was in. So if someone came to St. Mark's, I was always impressed when they had looked on St. Mark's website and somehow related that to me during our interview process. It said to me that they were interested and seriously committed to this application. Anybody who is interviewing you is wanting to assure that you are going to be committed to their facility. Nobody believes that you're going to work there for the rest of your life. However, they don't want you to come for 3 months and leave. It costs a lot of money to orient a new nurse. So you want to give the presentation that you're very invested. So spend a minute and get on their website and come prepared knowing that. Also, come prepared with your own questions. I always enjoy somebody having questions. Once again, it appears as though, or it certainly gives the feeling that you're invested and truly interested. To come without questions becomes a one-way situation. I'm asking all the questions, you're doing all the answering, and I like it to go two ways. You ask me questions as an interviewer, it gives me an opportunity to share with you some insight into those things that are of interest to you. It also allows me to understand what may be of interest to you. So if I have appreciated the interview and want to hire you, I can make sure that you get placed in the right spot or that the particular things that are of interest to you are addressed. So along the lines with the questions, bring something to write on. If you're going to ask questions, you should have them on a pad of paper, your day planner, whatever method of writing you want to use. A tablet of paper is most common. Have your questions at the top and document the answers. Once again, all those are indications of your interest and enthusiasm for the position that you're interviewing for. When you arrive for the interview, come 10 minutes early. Don't come 20 minutes early. Don't come 30 minutes early. When I know you're out there and you have an appointment for me to interview you and you come sooner than 10 minutes, then I get anxious because I'm keeping you waiting. And yet I may be very involved in something that I can't leave. So don't come 15 or 20 minutes early. Come 10 minutes. You could come 5 minutes early and that's okay too. Do not come late. Do not come late. If you have concerns about how well your car runs, then leave in time to make sure your car is going to get you there. If you are relying on public transportation, allow for added time. If you do get to the facility early and it's more than 10 minutes, walk around the facility. Go to the gift shop if you're at a hospital. Most big hospitals have a gift shop. Go sit in the lobby. Read your text messages. Speaking of cell phones, make sure it is shut off. Little is more aggravating than to be in an interview process and have your cell phone ring or buzz. I don't want to hear it vibrate. I don't want to know it's on you. So leave your cell phone in your car or shut it off, one of the two. But come 10 minutes early. Let's talk about dress. You don't have to get real dressed up, but male or female, do not wear jeans. I have had nurses come and interview in jeans. I have interviewed them. They don't leave the best of impression with me. If you want to appear as a professional, and you should, then you need to come wearing business casual. Slacks are okay. Doesn't have to be a skirt. Certainly for the males, it doesn't have to be a skirt. But just don't wear jeans. Just don't wear jeans. During the interview process, let's talk about questions for a minute. There's a whole group, if you will, of questions that really should not be asked of you. And these are in the EEOC rulings as well as in federal law. You're really not supposed to ask anything related to race, anything related to your marital status, your children, your age. But in the course of the conversation, sometimes you you click well in the interview process. And that question may come up about how many children do you have? You decide how comfortable you are answering those questions. My advice to you is go ahead and answer the questions, just keep it brief. Where those questions become illegal is if they are used to decide whether you get or don't get the job. You cannot be denied a position based on race, ethnicity, marital status, age. None of those things are to be considered in your acquiring the position. So if it comes up in a casual conversation, I always have a quick kind of squeeze if I hear those. If somebody else is joining me for the interview and they don't know any better and they ask the question, I can also share that maybe once or twice I have asked somebody how many children they had because they began to talk about their children or the relationship. The interview went on for an hour and the relationship moved in such a way that some personal conversation was acceptable. So whether you answer those questions or not is up to you. I think to respond with, I'm not comfortable answering those questions is probably not in your best interest. But you don't have to spend any time on them. You could say, I have 2 children and move on. Let's talk about questions in general. Behavioral questions have become very vogue. What would you do in this situation? Share with me a time when you have been challenged and your organizational skills were challenged. Behavioral questions are very vogue. So I would advise you to think of some scenarios where you have been challenged, where your prioritization skills have been challenged or questioned, or where you had to put them into place, or where you had a difficult boss or a difficult patient situation or a difficult family situation, and you had to learn how to, or not learn, you had to deal through that process. Those are the kind of questions that could be asked of you. And it's always nice if you have a true scenario that you can respond to those. Behavior questions are not my favorite. I have used them, but I don't generally. But it's always best if I don't have to sit and wait for somebody to think of a situation. It can be difficult because you, of course, want to shed the best light on yourself as a candidate. You don't want to come across as someone who is, it can't think of a situation where you were challenged with organizational skills or where you had to deal with a difficult patient and how you dealt with it. So just think about those kind of situations ahead of time. See the interview moves along. What if you were fired from one of your last positions? And if somebody reads your resume, one of the questions I often ask is, tell me about your last job. And they talk to me about what they did. Why did you leave? And if they say fired, then I want to know why. I've hired many people that were fired from their previous position. If you are in a position where you are asked that and you were fired from a previous job, your best response is always to be truthful. It is never ever viewed positively for you to shed negativity on your previous place of employment. So if you hated your boss and you thought that she was inappropriate, and she may very well have been, you want to be very careful revealing your true feelings on that situation. It's really okay to say something like, it was not the best fit for me, or I made a mistake and I regret it, or I was fired and not given the opportunity to share all the details. But I would not get negative about any place you've worked, even if it was not a good place. I don't want to interview somebody who is talking badly about the place that they previously worked. That to me is not the sign of a good professional. And I'm always interested in hiring strong professionals, as is all managers. So you'll want to think through how you're going to respond to that if you've been fired from a previous job. Always put the positive slant on it, never the negative in terms of responding to being fired. Always put the positive. Yes, I made a mistake and I learned a lot from it. And with those skills I've learned, it'll make me a better nurse. Put the positive spin on it. Don't ever bring up salary. It can be a challenge not to. How much do you think I'll get paid for this job is never a question the interviewer wants to hear. At the interview time, that's the time for you to decide if that position is a good fit for you and if you are a good fit for them. If that conclusion has come to be, then the interviewer at the right time will bring up salary. If you get to human resources and you're no longer with the nurse manager, because all of these interview skills I'm addressing have to do with working with the nurse manager or the director of nursing or whoever you may be interviewing with. If you're in a big facility, you will end up eventually in HR. And if someone hasn't talked to you about wage then, I think it's fine to bring it up, but I certainly wouldn't do so in your first interview. You could be hired at the first interview. Anybody with any experience in interviewing should ask you even during the first interview about your thoughts on salary so that they have some idea if your interests are in range. If you're a new graduate, which all of you will be, your salary pretty much will be base salary, which I think is right around 22 or 23 an hour. So most hospitals, most acute care hospitals have a very strong salary grid and they don't adjust. If you're an LPN, many hospitals do make some adjustment for LPN, but don't bring it up at the first interview. It's viewed as that's what you're most interested in. And in fact, we all are interested in money, and that's not something we should be embarrassed or even shy about. It has to do with timing, and the first interview is not the time unless the interviewer brings it up. There are times when, and it's becoming more and more common now for an interviewer, a human resources in particular, if you're applying at a big facility, to want to do a video interview with you. It can be faster. It can be expedited more quickly. It saves a lot of time. And you can decide whether you want to do that or not. Some people think that video interviewing is really not the right way to go because you remove the ability to establish a relationship. Relationships in most things are very important. And for you to be able to sit with the interviewer and establish some level of relationship, I think is very important. I have done video interviews with somebody who was out of state, who was coming into town. I've done many of them, and they are okay. They're not bad. I don't mean to suggest that. Nothing replaces being in person. However, you might be getting ready to move to New York. And if they're willing to do a video interview, it would save you $1,000 in airfare. So all those things have to be considered. If the option is available for you to be in person, I would always try to move in that direction. I think you have a much more successful interview if you do it in person. And if not, understandable. Video interview can be an acceptable option. And last but not least, I want to talk for a minute about after the interview. You should have left with them a cover letter that has your cell phone number on it. You should have left with them a resume that has all of your information. Somebody else will be talking with you about resumes. Resumes are something that I have real specific thoughts about how they should be. But it's always a good idea to either send an email or even drop a note in the mail. Nothing's nicer than to receive a handwritten note in the mail that says, "Thank you so much for the interview. I so look forward to hearing from you. I know that I would be an asset to your hospital," or your whatever it is you're applying for. There's absolutely a professional touch that occurs when that happens. It completes the process. It says something of your character, and it's always a good thing to do. You can follow up with a phone call. It's not as effective as taking the time to actually handwrite. I would suggest that you send a handwritten note first, do an email if you choose not to do that, and a phone call is better than no follow-up. So in that order. Additionally, how long should you wait before you do a follow-up phone call to see if you've gotten the position? I think it's reasonable to wait 48 hours. I don't think you need to wait any longer than that, 72 at the most, and do a follow-up phone call and just say, "Hi, this is Sue Giroux. I am interested in where the process might be for the position of staff nurse on the med-surg floor. I'm very interested in that position, and so I thought I'd follow up and see if you were close to making a decision." And then let them talk to you. The squeaky wheel does get the oil. The squeaky wheel absolutely gets the oil. We had a glut of nurses not very long ago. That's not the case so much anymore. The nursing shortage is starting to grow and grow, and eventually it's going to not be good. It'll be good for new graduates who want jobs. It won't be good necessarily for patient care. But during the time we were in the glut, 2008, 2009, when nurses went back to work from retirement or from part-time to full-time, it was very difficult to get a position. Graduates would say to me, "Ms. Giroux, how am I going to get a job? I've applied everywhere and I can't even hardly get an interview." The squeaky wheel gets noticed. So my recommendation in those situations, particularly if it's a place you want to work and they say, "Well, we don't have any openings," is you go by every week. You go by every week and talk to HR. You go by every week and talk to somebody. Every 2 or 3 weeks you leave some cookies because you want them to say, "Oh, for goodness sakes, let's put her to work." Or, "Yeah, Mary showed up again today." It's okay as long as you're not obnoxious, as long as you're always kind and professional, of course. It's really okay to do continued follow-up. If I had been in that situation in 2009, I know I would have gotten employed. And I would have gotten employed because I just wouldn't have given up. Tenacious. I'd have been tenacious. I think that's all I have for today. Once again, I wish I could have been there live. I enjoy visiting with the learners and sharing knowledge. So you all have a good afternoon, and I know I'll see you soon. Thank you.